Hey guys, just checking that I'm live on Facebook and YouTube. On Facebook, let me down. Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S here, back with another video. I'm live on Facebook and YouTube. Anyone watching on YouTube, Facebook, please check out my YouTube channel so you can find me there. If you've not already found me there, but for those watching, I'll probably post a link for my YouTube, my Facebook, which I normally do on the Facebook version of this. But please check and see if you can find me under my name comes under Michael K. Shenton or Michael Covey Shenton, in fact, or Covey or whatever, Michael Covey Shenton or something like that. But yeah, please see if you can find me. You might recognise my picture if you see me on YouTube. Yeah, I've got one picture of like with Italian football or the Italian football teams, a list of the Italian football teams, and another one where I'm in Kenya, working with supporting the school, the Rare Gem School, which I support in Kenya. So yeah, that's the work I did with in an informal capacity in Kenya, which I do my best to support that school. And I might not do a very good job, but I do try in an informal capacity. But anyway, these are my plans for December, and I'm trying to focus on these plans. And I wondered whether to put plans or dreams, because I wondered how to whether to be dream-driven, dream-like, or for the first day to cover more realistic sort of plans. And dare say maybe some of the boring stuff, but I do get bored very easily and like to have fun. But yeah, so November is already gone, unfortunately, and I didn't quite get to do the things I wanted to do, but it is what it is. Hopefully next year I'll do a better job at it, but I suppose I gave it a go in a way. I like to work smart instead of hard, as I often say. But yeah, so I thought instead of being dream-driven, dream-like, dream-driven, or whatever, maybe I'll talk more realistically, but I'm not sure. Maybe it'll be a bit mix of the two, but I suppose these are some of my plans for the month. They probably won't cover all of them, or maybe they will, I don't know. It might be the theme of, because it's a Monday, things happening with them, or my general Monday plans and things like that. So I'll probably just crack on with it, crack to it, get to it, or whatever. Hopefully it won't be too cringe-worthy or whatever, but I'll do my best. But as ever, I welcome your feedback. Please comment in the comments, please like and share the video, and I appreciate your views, as in your opinions and your viewing of the videos and that kind of thing. And here goes. So number one, as per usual, I'm doing this in list form. I hope both Facebook and YouTube record as well as possible, and I'll probably get the boring stuff out of the way, like Mondays, for instance. I have to take out the rubbish, take out the trash. I'd love for robots to do that kind of thing, but it's a first world problem, I guess. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I have to take out the garbage, rubbish, trash, or whatever you want to call it. Take out the trash. Can run alliterations, TT or whatever. Anyway, sorry, going all over the place, but yeah, I hope it won't go all over the place. But taking out the bins for the bin men, garbage for Americans out there to take out. So not the most pleasant job either. It's a bit boring. And it's not the most cleanly job, but it's an important job, obviously, to do. Get rid of all the rubbish and all that kind of thing. Even though I am older, I still want to be a bit cleanly, at least a bit cleanly. But yeah, and those sorts of things. I've got to admit, I kept meaning to hoover, but I didn't really get around to it. Normally, either on the eve of a new month or on New Month, or at least around that time, I like to do things like change my bedding, get some new fresh clothes, put my clothes in the wash, and things like that for a new beginning, a new start, and all that kind of thing, a fresh new month. If not on the day or before, it's like around that time. Sometimes I say the 4th because of my silly pattern, like all for one and one for all, or whatever. But my stepdad shaves me because I'm very clumsy. I mentioned that before, but I cut myself and all that kind of thing. So in November, I just decided to leave it to grow, and also I didn't get to see my stepdad. So partly I thought I'd just let it grow. I could have done it like a November, as they have it here in the UK, where they fundraise to tackle cancer and that kind of thing. Or for some sort of symbol for charity. If you want to make any donations to charity, well, I'd really appreciate it. And if so, please let me know again in the comments, or comment whatever you like in the comments. But yeah, getting all the chores out of the way if I can, if I have the energy. Sometimes I just don't have the energy or the motivation, like even to do things like Hoover. And again, I'd love for robots to do that kind of thing. I'd I admit I haven't hoovered for a long time, but not something I want to do, but I guess it sometimes needs to be done. But things like emptying the dishwasher and all that boring stuff, taking out the garbage, rubbish, trash, whatever you can call it, which I'll do on Mondays. But yeah, bring on the robots. But, as I part jokingly say, like, surely aliens and screwball robots can't make it any worse than humanity, but famous last words maybe. But yeah, I mean, some people say a life without purpose, but I think that how can you not have purpose? Like, there's so many. If you go to your local city or town centre, I'm sure you see loads of homeless people you could help. I don't believe in giving homeless people money, but you could like buy them a meal, or even we could fund, like, instead of spending money on wars and weapons trade, we could be spending money on like housing, building more housing and training centres, places people can go to get teaching and training and have showers and get dressed up and all that kind of thing. But I hope to come to that in more details. Yeah, I thought I'd get the boring stuff out of the way. And one more thing I think I might say, I'm not sure whether to say it's point number 1 or 2. I think I'm going to move on because I know that was in quite a bit of detail, but I think I'll move on to point number 2 anyway. So I'll say it's in point number 2. A while back, I talked about like a neurodiverse group with someone and how I'd love to travel to Italy. And they said, hold on, I am part Italian. They said they don't believe the idea is going to work, especially because I can't speak Italian. I only support their football teams. And I thought they were a naysayer. I hope to prove them wrong and any critics wrong. As some people say, if you want to be an entrepreneur, not that I'm interested in business, but how it works and all that kind of thing, I find it curious. I went to a talk on like the local library where I live, and like libraries in the county I live in and in the town I live in, and the history as well, like how it used to be and that kind of thing, and how things have changed. And I thought that was quite interesting. Although I'm not hugely interested in history, but I thought it was quite interesting. Part of me thought, why did I go to this talk? Because I'm not that hugely interested in history. And also, sometimes when I go to tea mornings, I think, why do I do this just to save a bit of money on electricity or whatever? But it's nice to get out of the house and meet people. And a lot of the time, they're all biddies, as I say, but at least you learn a lot from them. And I'm quite old myself. But yeah, the reason why I mentioned that is I talked about neurodiversity, and this person said, do you mean things like autism? And I said, it could include autism. And she said, oh no, I work with what, as she described it, the D's. So she said dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, and that kind of thing. Dysgraphia is another one that begins with D. And she said not the A's like autism and ADHD, because otherwise you'll get people who think so differently. But to me, the part of what I would describe as neurodiversity, and which we call neurodivergence, is to include people with different minds, not neurotypical like minds. So I suppose that you could argue technically that would come under neurodiversity, but as my sister says, one of my sisters says to me, but I use the term probably erroneously, i.e. wrongly, but I would basically in December, ideally, I would love to work on, like, as well as trying to empower people across Africa and tackle poverty and things like that, I'd love to especially support people with, and talk about as well, like dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia, I think there's four that begin with D. So again, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia. Now I'm not going to go into too much details on those, but I think they all come from Greek, and dys means difficulty with, and lexia means like language. Dyspraxia, which I believe I didn't know I had when I was at school. I was told I was dyslexic at school, but I wasn't told all the other stuff. I thought it'd be quite interesting if I had like 5 or even 6 different neurodivergent conditions, learning disabilities, special needs, or whatever you call them, like extra special. But it would be interesting if I did these tests online. Maybe next November I could do all these tests to see if I have all these conditions or whatever. I mean, I learned to spell because someone called Mrs. Fellows taught me how to spell. So that's her first name, but I knew her as Mrs. Fellows. She's probably sad no longer with us, but I'm sure. But she was a really good teacher. She even taught me somehow. We probably tortured each other, but on a serious note, she even taught me. But yeah, it's like 2 words broken up into. It's like 1 word broken up into 2 and then 3. So it's dyslexia being 1 word, and then you can break it up to dys and lexia, difficulty with languages. So you go from 1 word to 2 and then 3. And I guess dyscalculia is what some might call maths dyslexia. So it's again difficulty with, and I suppose calculia is related to like calculus or maths. Again, some people call it maths dyslexia. And then dyspraxia is difficulty with movement and coordination. So I'm really bad at practical things. I'm very clumsy. Things like I struggle to learn to drive. I no longer drive because I lost my confidence. It probably took me ages to learn how to ride a bike. I don't like to go on roads because I'm very clumsy. I don't really ride a bike or anything like that. Well, I can, but not on. I don't want to do it on main roads, and then people complain if you on pavements. So, but yeah, it's about coordination. I haven't said I'm no good at anything that's practical or whatever, except for typing. And then I possibly have dysgraphia, which I thought dyspraxia affects your writing because it makes sense to me, like coordinating your writing. But I think it's dysgraphia, which is where you struggle to hold the pen properly and write. So I love writing, but unfortunately, I'm not very good at it. People tell me my writing looks like a spider, or well, actually, they say something about it looked like a crash on the M1 or something like that. Anyway. But sometimes I struggle to even read my own writing now and again. But most of the time, I can probably read my own writing and know what I was trying to say. But sometimes I have bad habits, like going right to the edge of the page or things like that. I'll talk about that another time maybe. And again, I did say I won't go into too much detail, but yeah, so there's maths dyslexia. I wouldn't say I'm the worst mathematician in the world, but I'm not particularly good. I had 3 tuition teachers. Two taught me maths and one taught me science, but it was hopeless. I think my mum probably wasted money and time in that one, but obviously she wasn't to know that wasn't going to work for someone with my conditions and difficulties or whatever, and laziness as well, perhaps. But anyway, but yeah, I'll probably talk more about those throughout the month, and that kind of thing. I'd love to be good at maths, but unfortunately I'm not. I even read someone listed like Bill Gates as having like dyscalculia, but that's not really true because he's really good at maths. So, but yeah, I wouldn't say I'm the worst as a mathematician in the world, but I'm not particularly good. So I do wonder if I do have dyscalculia, dysgraphia, dyspraxia. I was told I have in the occupational assessment, dyslexia I was told I had at school, and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think that covers all the ones that begin with D, all the Ds, or whatever. But moving on, number 3, I say I'll probably try not to cover in these videos everything I'm going to do, like a whole month maybe. I might cover as much as I can think of, but I say I'd love for there to be robots, so we didn't have to do things like take out rubbish, or even like things like fill or empty a dishwasher. I know they're first world problems, but that's the least of my problems, to be fair. But still, it would be better if a robot could do that, and I'd do more of my writing, making videos, and other things, be freed up to do things I want to do. That's why I believe life can never be that free. I also hope to talk on that note about like freedom, what it means to me, and how I wish to God we'd have more of it, and that kind of thing. I wish God would give more freedom as well. My free and like even asking, does freedom exist? One of my sisters I talked to, she said either you're free or not. And I disagree. I think there's not much details to go into it in this video, but maybe I will in point number 4. So as I have my own definitions of freedom, and I think I've learned about freedom is it's not like you're either free or not. I think we're somewhere. It's like, no, I don't think anyone's 100% free, and I hope no one's 100% unfree. Maybe there are sadly some people are 100% unfree or whatever, or not free or whatever. But yeah, I have a different definition of freedom. I mean, someone described freedom as not doing what you want, but doing what's right. But to me, that's not really freedom. In fact, once you say what's right and wrong in a way, you're sort of already limiting freedom. But it also reminds me of what I think I've learned, especially about dyslexia, as well as those related conditions generally, conditions like dyslexia, is that I've learned I think I've learned a fair amount about dyslexia, but also I've learned about intelligence. I think dyslexia and related conditions have taught me a lot about intelligence. Like, I don't think you're either clever or not in many cases. Like some people I think of, like Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Warren Buffett even, or whatever, especially Bill Gates or Elon Musk or people like that. I think of like being really clever, and like I get these words mixed up, like intelligent, smart, clever, and that kind of thing. Basically having a good brain and having a good mind or whatever. Again, mind or brain, 2 words are mixed up. A good head on you or whatever, head on your shoulders or whatever. And I think it's better to put an old head on young shoulders than the other way around. But yeah, I think that's not like some dyslexic people. To symbolize this, like to give an example, some dyslexic, I often think I like to think of metaphors and hypothetical examples and whatever. But some dyslexics are really good business people, but they really struggle even just to read or write, something that most people take for granted. They can struggle with, but they can be great business people, or they can be great sports stars, or different things like that. So, well, I suppose that doesn't mean you're intelligent necessarily, but I mean, there's things they could do that seem really intelligent, but at the same time they struggle with reading or writing, or even sometimes like the alphabet, something that most people will see as quite simple. So again, dyspraxia, like for instance, something that's really simple for other people might be really hard for dyspraxia, and sometimes it could be the other way around. Um, in other words, we find things that other people find really hard, we find it easy. Like if someone says a task is hard, easy, sometimes I think, oh, that's a lot worse than a task being hard, because it means it'll be more embarrassing if I mess it up, for one thing. And another thing is like, as someone partly jokingly said, they asked what are some good jobs, what are some good careers for people with dyspraxia, and they typed up on Facebook and Facebook group. There's quite a few Facebook groups out there, so I can't quite remember which one it was. But they said that anything that's easy for other people, but a lot of truth is said in jest. Another thing dyspraxic people sometimes struggle with is like humour and taking things too seriously and things like that. Although some of us have to develop humour just to get by. As someone said to me, I said, I'd love for us to be teetotalers, and they said some dyspraxic people need to just drink just to get through the day. I'm surprised I never got into it myself, but yeah, I'll talk more about that hopefully throughout this month. A controversial idea I normally talk about is how I love for dyslexic and other neurodivergent people. I know I want to focus more on the ones that begin with D because of my patterns and things like that. I'll try and focus more on that. But I'd love for us to resist from joining militaries, gangs, and things like that. Well, militaries, I think, is a controversial one. I think most people probably say it would be better if we weren't part of gangs, terrorism, or anything that involves violence unless in self-defense, any law breaking with all that. But yeah, I think that it would actually benefit most of society. So I'd say it's controversial. I think the military thing. So many people support the military. Some people call them troop worshippers, and some people call them like it's like you're not allowed to criticize the military or whatever. But yeah, we could take all the money we spend on wars, or some of that money at least, even if we tax that at like 10%. Like we had a tax on the weapons trade, or reduce the weapons trade, in other words, rather than tax it, I suppose is another way, same sort of thing. Well, it would save time as well, and probably save more money to reduce military spending. So I suppose I'm the opposite to Donald Trump in that regard. Like reduce military spending by 10%. Encourage countries to do that. Maybe that's something the UN can do. Reduce military spending by 10%. Reduce militarism. Try and cut back on wars. Probably the opposite to Donald Trump in that regard, but reduce like military spending and spending on the weapons trade and things like that, and try and tax weapons profits to make it pretty much impossible, either illegal to lobby for wars and should call pretty much impossible to profit from wars. Probably should be careful what I say, but yeah, that could be spent on like providing clean water, healthcare, education, teaching and training and that kind of thing. We can be the part of the peace we want to see. So again, controversial. I would want us to not join militaries, but also I wouldn't want to join gangs, terrorism, or anything that's violent unless in self-defense, and to avoid anything that's law breaking. I love to discourage my fellow dyslexic from doing those things. And again, similar with dyspraxics, dyscalculics, dysgraphics, and whatnot, and that kind of thing. So yeah, if we cut back on those things, then we can spend more on more positive things. Also, I talked recently about, and because it's the first today, I think I'll look after number one. Thinking of looking after number one a bit, or quite a lot. Feeding my own belly. Anyway, looking after number one, I was thinking of my dreams for Italian football, which is one of my most selfish sort of things. But maybe I'll cover that in point number 6 and about Celtic in point number 7. But yeah, on that note, maybe I'll move on. But there's something I was going to say, but I'll wait until point number 6 and 7 because for some reasons, again, certain numbers remind me of certain things I've said in previous videos and may have even mentioned in this one. But as ever, please feel free to disagree. I do talk about like supporting freedom of speech and freedom of expression. So some people might think joining the military is a good thing or whatever, fair enough. And some people might disagree with me, like about cutting back on militarism, the military industrial complex, the weapons trade, and things like that by 10% and making it as hard as possible to profit from wars. I guess those who profit from wars will probably want to see that, and those who think we need to defend the territory and that kind of thing, which is important, I agree, but I think there's different ways to do it, but they might disagree, which is fair enough. But moving on, number 5, I'd love to talk about and raise a profile of like dyslexic entrepreneurs, including even millionaires and billionaires. I think of millionaires again, use my patterns because like Millionaire Monday, but also ambitions more generally. I'd love to support dyslexic people in the music industry, dyslexic people in the movie industry, and different industries, and look at how we can network together, music, movies, and other creative industries and whatever. Again, I'm thinking one second with them just because it's a Monday, because I'm nuts like that, a bit mad like that. I'm mad and I'm dyslexic and also mad, I guess. In the past, I felt a bit like a fraud because someone taught me how to spell. I know I have my problems with my punctuation. Maybe that's a dyslexic thing or a dysgraphic thing or just a me thing. I don't know, a Michael thing. But certainly not a Michael thing because I'm the only one who writes the way I write or whatever. But I sort of guess where semicolons should go, or they feel like they should go in places where they shouldn't. Or to me, they feel like they should go there, but to other people, they don't. I even I've sort of downloaded Grammarly, but because of my habits, I sort of ignore it at the same time. So I do struggle to change those habits, being a creature of habit, a creature, and definitely not a monster. No. But anywho, yeah, I got ideas like The Monster, Crocodilian, and many other movie ideas. But I'd love to collaborate with my fellow dyslexics and dyspraxics and whatnot, perhaps even. I'd love to be able to sing. I'm a bit shy with singing. Some people might say I should be. Some people might like my voice. You never know, I guess. Pigs might fight, but yeah. But supporting us in different areas, and I'd love for us to be philanthropists, but I would love to talk about dyslexic millionaires and billionaires just to say what we can achieve, what we can do. I know Richard Branson says he's not a billionaire or whatever, or he doesn't like being called a billionaire. And I've heard of another dyslexic that also has ADHD called Paul O'Falla, if I pronounce his name right. He says he's not a billionaire officially, even though he sold his company for over $1 billion, but I suppose that doesn't mean he's a billionaire because he might only get a certain percentage of that. But moving on, number 6, I did mention, I would say about my selfish dreams for Italian football. And I talked about that military stuff, and the reason why I was going to mention it in point number 4 is because of my dream to have a consumer group which says, instead of investing in wars and the weapons trade and destruction and things like that, we could divest from the weapons trade especially and invest instead in football, peace through football. But because I'm an Italian fan, as well as a Celtic fan, which I hope to come to, I dream for it to be invested into that instead. And trying to think if there's anything else about point number 6. But yeah, I'd love to travel with my fellow dyslexics. Now, Dyslexia Awareness Month is in October, but because of my use of alliteration, I thought I'd cover Dyslexia December, and because there was lots of things I didn't get around to getting done in October. So I think the 23rd is on a Tuesday, and hopefully I'm going to talk about the case for investing in dyslexics, which is an article I read, and possibly do a 40-point list video as usual, my 4-part list videos, to talk about the case for investing in dyslexics and what strengths we have and things like that, and how we can invest together, maybe even things like that. So yeah, hopefully it comes out. All being well, on the 23rd, I'll cover that one. And I might talk about dyslexic millionaires and dyslexic billionaires, all being well, and that kind of thing. Or even dyslexic trillionaires, or whatever, quadrillionaires. I'm getting carried away. But on a serious note, I would love for us to be philanthropists as well. But if we get into a position where we can achieve and show what we can achieve, then we can hopefully become philanthropists. But obviously, I've got to say, I'd love to travel to Italy and work with football clubs like AC Milan, who I dream will work with dyslexics and those with mental health problems and whatnot, and include them and see what we could do to achieve and show what we could do for football. Normally, dyspraxics don't really like football because we struggle with coordination, but for whatever reason, I love football, and some dyspraxics probably do as well. So it does affect people differently and at different levels. Like someone's a bus driver with dyspraxia, and people are like, well, how can you be a bus driver with dyspraxia? And they said, I'm extra cautious when I drive. But obviously a bus is quite a large vehicle, so to park it would be really difficult. I really struggle with parking. I really struggle with that coordination. No matter how much I try or practice, maybe it's a confidence issue as well. But I stopped driving mainly because of like parking issues, and I suppose it would take a while to get the confidence back to get into that. So I've become a bit too comfortable not doing so. But anyway, moving on, number 7, I'd love for maybe us to work on like building AI and robotics, apps and things like that to make life easier for ourselves and others. As I say, necessity is a mother of all inventions. And if you see a challenge you have, so some dyslexics have developed things like the Intel Reader, dyslexia, I think it's called, spelled IE at the end instead of dyslexia or something like that. And it's a Dutch guy who's built an app to make it easier to write or things like that. On that note, also remind me, I'd love to do one-to-one interviews, street interviews, if I can get a mic and things like that. I don't know what that was, but a mic, interview people, and also Zoom chats with my fellow dyslexics, and also maybe dyspraxics, dyscalculics, dysgraphics, and whatnot. So as I say, I'd love to focus on those groups. So if anyone's interested, please let me know in the comments. I'd say there's overlapping conditions and things like that. So like people tell me I have a monotone voice or things like that. So I possibly have autism or whatever as well and all that kind of thing. But I'd say I'm focusing on the D's, if you like. So dyslexia and all that kind of thing. But yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, making life easier, like someone said about an idea for a joystick for people with cerebral palsy. They may already exist, but when I talk about people sharing ideas so they can play games easier or things like that, people with disabilities, adaptive technology. That's another thing, disability empowerment. Actually, just remember that now. Now that I mentioned that, there's a few things I forgot. I mean, making this video has helped me to jog my memory. But also dyslexics working with, as well as people with mental health problems, and maybe dyspraxics, and possibly to an extent dysgraphics and dyscalculics having a purpose and helping Italian football. I hope to get as many as possible to do that. And Italy and Celtic, Italian football, Italy through football, and Celtic as well in Glasgow could host events to raise awareness on such conditions and fundraise for such, but also hopefully benefit from such. Maybe I can encourage my fellow dyslexic and S&P. It's not that many, even a secret one. But on a serious note, like encourage dyslexic entrepreneurs and that kind of thing to invest into and sponsor Celtic and Italian football. And that kind of thing. Moving on, number 8, I'd love to see how we can empower disabled people and other disadvantaged people, homeless people, for instance. I say I don't believe in giving money to homeless. I believe it's like buying them food or drink, going around with a trolley maybe and giving out food, drink, and things like that. Sorry. I hope to talk more about that in part 3 and possibly 4, maybe in part 2 as well. But moving on, number 9, I'd maybe talk about the irony of dyslexic writers and how we can work together to help each other to plan and organise our time and prioritise and things like that. And number 10, supporting even like young dyslexics to learn about entrepreneurship. Like when I was younger, I think if someone encouraged me, but most people are not really entrepreneurial, but if someone encouraged me to like set up my own tuck shop, lemonade store and things like that, instead of tuition, I think it probably would have been a lot better. But without a crystal ball, I can't really say for sure. But I could have used my dyslexic creativity maybe, and maybe done maths that makes more sense to me, or maybe not. Maybe I would have still struggled. But yeah, as I said before, I think it's better to put old head on young shoulders than not. Also, maybe think because on Monday as well, I'm talking about Italian football. There's something called Made in It. There's a project about Made in Italy, and it's about the Italian League Serie A. And I'd love for Italy to. I hope to talk about Italian football and Celtic quite a lot, and I hope to as often as possible. And I hope people enjoy it. And I hope to talk about like youth development in Italian football and Celtic, and how I hope, especially Italian football and maybe even Celtic to an extent, which would be interesting, could make or create, so to speak, or produce the next Messi, Ronaldo, the two Ronnies as I call them, the Brazilian one the Portuguese one, R9, was a Brazilian one. The famous or infamous, depending on how you look at it, Ronaldo from Portugal, Maradona, Pele, Zizou, Zidane, and players like that. The next one of those, Georgie Best, and players like that, even in different positions, coming from Italy, best possible goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, and strikers in the future, and that kind of thing. But anyway, peace and love on that note. Sorry for being so long-winded. As I say, I'm dyslexic, I need extra time as well.